Amaya wasn't a stranger to challenges. The oldest of four siblings, she carried the weight of responsibility with quiet grace. Every morning, she woke up before dawn to make breakfast and get her younger siblings ready for school. Her mother, a nurse working long shifts, depended on Amaya to keep the household running. Between school, volunteering at the local food bank, and tutoring neighborhood kids, Amaya's days were full. Her evenings were spent with her nose in textbooks, dreaming of a future where she could become a doctor and lift her family out of poverty. But dreams cost money, and in their tight-knit community, resources were scarce. The cracked sidewalks and peeling paint on houses told stories of struggle, yet there was always a sense of camaraderie. Amaya's warmth and determination made her a beacon of hope for the neighborhood. One fateful evening, as Amaya studied at her desk, a faint, acrid smell wafted through her open window. At first, she dismissed it, thinking it was a neighbor burning leaves. But as the scent grew stronger, she glanced outside and froze. The night sky was ablaze with an orange glow. Mr. Johnson's house was on fire. Mr. Johnson, her elderly neighbor, was known for his quiet demeanor and love for gardening. He often exchanged pleasantries with Amaya and offered her advice about life and education. Her heart raced as she realized he might still be inside. She grabbed her phone and dialed 911, her fingers trembling. The operator assured her that help was on the way, but Amaya couldn't just stand by. With her mother at work and her siblings asleep, Amaya knew the risks of leaving the house. But the thought of Mr. Johnson trapped inside overwhelmed her fear. Without hesitation, she bolted out the door, sprinting toward the flames. The heat was intense as she reached the house. Neighbors were beginning to gather, but no one dared approach the inferno. Amaya hesitated for only a moment before pushing the front door open. Smoke billowed out, stinging her eyes and lungs. She dropped to her knees, crawling through the house to stay beneath the thickest smoke. "Mr. Johnson," she called, her voice hoarse. A faint cough answered her from the kitchen. She moved quickly, navigating the familiar layout. There, huddled in the corner, was Mr. Johnson. His face was pale, and his eyes were glassy from the smoke. "Amaya," he rasped, his voice barely audible. "Yes, it's me. We need to get out," she urged, helping him to his feet. He leaned heavily on her as they made their way toward the door. A section of the ceiling collapsed behind them, the roar of the flames growing louder. Just as Amaya's strength began to falter, they stumbled out into the cool night air. The crowd erupted in cheers as firefighters rushed past them. Amaya and Mr. Johnson collapsed onto the lawn, gasping for air. Paramedics quickly tended to Mr. Johnson, who nodded weakly toward Amaya, gratitude shining in his eyes. "You saved my life," he whispered before being loaded into an ambulance. The next day, Amaya woke to find her street abuzz with activity. News of her bravery had spread, and neighbors stopped by to thank her and offer small tokens of appreciation. While she appreciated their kindness, she felt uncomfortable with the attention. She didn't consider herself a hero. She had simply done what needed to be done. Later that afternoon, there was a knock at the door. Amaya opened it to find Mr. Johnson standing there, looking healthier than she expected. Beside him were two sharply dressed men holding briefcases. Amaya's mother appeared behind her, her brow furrowed with concern. "Mr. Johnson, are you okay?" Amaya asked. "I'm more than okay. Thanks to you," he said with a warm smile. "May we come in?" Once seated in the modest living room, Mr. Johnson leaned forward, his expression serious yet kind. "Amaya, I owe you my life. What you did wasn't just brave, it was extraordinary. I've been thinking a lot about how I can repay you." "You don't have to repay me," Amaya said quickly. "I'm just glad you're safe." Mr. Johnson chuckled softly. "That's exactly why I want to help you. You didn't hesitate to risk your life for mine. I need you to know something about me. I've lived a simple life here, but before I retired, I ran a successful business. When I sold it, I made more money than I could ever spend in a lifetime." Amaya's eyes widened. Mr. Johnson had always seemed so unassuming. She never would have guessed he was wealthy. "I've decided to use some of that wealth to help you achieve your dreams," he continued. "These gentlemen are my lawyers. We've set up a trust fund that will cover your college tuition, living expenses, and anything else you need to become a doctor. Amaya's mouth fell open. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, Mr. Johnson said. Just promise me you'll use this opportunity to make the world a better place. Tears streamed down Amaya's face as she nodded. Her mother, sitting beside her, wiped her own tears and hugged Amaya tightly. This is a blessing, Amaya. Don't let pride get in the way. Over the following weeks, Amaya's life transformed. The trust fund allowed her to focus on her studies without worrying about financial burdens. She received invitations to speak at community events, where she inspired others with her story of courage and determination. Despite the newfound attention, Amaya remained humble. She continued volunteering at the food bank and tutoring younger kids in her neighborhood. Mr. Johnson often visited, sharing stories of his life and offering advice as she navigated her new opportunities. As Amaya prepared to leave for college, she reflected on the night that changed everything. Her act of bravery had not only saved a life, but had also opened doors she never imagined possible. With Mr. Johnson's support and the love of her community, she felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Years later, as Dr. Amaya Johnson, she adopted his last name in gratitude. She returned to her old neighborhood to open a free clinic. Mr. Johnson, now in his 90s, attended the grand opening, his eyes filled with pride. Together, they proved that acts of kindness, no matter how small or large, could create ripples of change that last a lifetime.